Well, looks like we're going to take a little sidebar. As I began to write part 3, my introduction became a video upon itself, and so not to make part 3 double the length of 2, I decided to share some personal insights to keep at the forefront of our thoughts, the true division between ourselves and this impending pre-planned collapse. So I'm just going to try and not arrive at a conclusion, but rather give you the interpreter reasons to ponder your current predicament. We can now begin to read between the lines those matters of public interest when we choose to start with locating where our rights are secured by means of noticing that it is the English law itself that provides the separation, namely the nature of the subject matter it deals with, those concerning rules of action over a right of use to land, not people. People are separated yet annexed to through their express or implied agreements to those estates held in English law. To stress this point, law is created to secure rights to the use of land, which ensures man is free when he no longer is holding any interest to land under English law. Before we touch on the money system, so develop the features of our elephant, I would like to speak about its trainer, the group of puppets responsible for doing the bidding of their handlers. It is commonly discussed today in many circles of the freedmen and sovereign movement that the government we are subject to is a corporation. If the government is only a corporation, then this would be the type of trainer we would only be subject to. It is a corporation, yes, but using our new eyes, could government also be something completely different and so dependent upon, like ourselves, of possession of different powers, which is then dependent upon the status we use? As we have discussed, both status and subject matter become indicators of the type of jurisdiction one is holding an estate or interest to land within. What separates us from concepts such as government, when we look to the law, to God, to reason, it is impossible. And that is sort of been noticed as a question. So what separates us from concepts such as government when we look to law, to God, to reason? It is impossible for any agreement, such as a title or legal person, such as government, to hold the power and duty of a tenant for life, who, by its very capacity, has held immediate possession of an estate in the common law through operation of law. Although every individual who works for government is a tenant for life at their core, in order to be noticed in English law, they, like all acceptances of citizenry, become absorbed into the personality established by a group, whereby the group becomes the new individual to protect the laws it creates. Will protect through the laws it creates, Without the group, the common law state right of possession is embedded with the laws of inheritance, in which, through its operation, incorporates rules concerning expectancy. And expectancy is of two sorts, as told in Blackstone's commentaries, either reversion or remainder. Now, not wanting to spend time here discussing these two other than simply to act as a reminder that reversion means that the lesser estate is absorbed back into the original creator, whereas remainder relates to the estate left over after the death of the current possessor. The group's divided estates, on the other hand, affect the rules of succession, thereby, in keeping with the foundations of English law, that no lands can ever be held in abeyance, means every piece must be held by a superior right. All estates are always held under a superior right, so as to trace its origin, which, in keeping with the common sense reasoning in law, namely, all rules to the use of land come from life first. Thereby, each individual is made free to make a choice in how they wish to use their capacity of a tenant for life. Through the status and subject matter, they are noticed to be declaring an estate right too. So if we then, with our foundation in hand, that clearly separates us from government, who has no right to speak to the tenant for life, cannot even conceive natural law or the originating common law, let's look into what is government as relates to our ability to interact. The government is a body politic, or simply a juristic federal unit that is tasked with establishing the administration over a defined territory. Foundationally, this type of government is set up to account for the ways that its corporations make. It's not a corporation in the traditional sense, but nonetheless a perpetuity instrument that is confined within its own agreement to be determined as a sovereign government with rights granted to legislate rules over a specified territory under the English law system. How does government then speak to corporations whereby in law and equity both must be of the same jurisdiction so as to be considered equal in law? As it relates to the rules of equity, I'm thinking out loud based on what I pieced together from my study into law and before equity, to perhaps enliven in yourself through your own reasoning. I continue. If we look into the origins of an express trust, for instance, as discussed in Weiss's Concise Trustee Handbook, this type of trust is construed to be an unincorporated legal entity, same as a government. And so in order to interact with entities of the incorporated nature, meaning that for law to work all must be on equal footing, the trustee or government would then have to create corporations so as to be able to interact with like. I was doing some research into the location of Canada Corporation, and there were two, both existing in the District of Columbia, to which I also indirectly found a series of corporations created under the name of a past Conservative Prime Minister. This past Prime Minister, named Stephen Harper, just through happenstance I stumbled upon his name being used in various forms under Dun and Bradstreet listings. Not unlike how our name may be differently spelled or represented on various forms of documents and applications, so was the case here. Are there any Justin Trudeau corporations, or perhaps Biden corporations, made once they are elected to be Prime Minister or POTUS? I would only surmise that, yes, there is. So like a trustee of an express trust is unincorporated, in order to be tasked with administrating over the principle of a trust, would this be also the same when we speak about a sovereign government? I would also like to insert another point to consider, that a board, such as those belonging to the financial structure of an economy, for instance, the board representative of the Financial Administration Act of Canada, can hold the same capacity as a natural person. A natural person is with different powers and duties than an artificial person, and so how could this board be made accountable according to the same jurisdiction as a corporation? Meaning that the mines would be compared to oil and water. Also discussed in Weiss's Concise Trustee Handbook, that a trustee of an express trust will create a corporation to use within the system or hire an authorized representative to set up and or manage the corporation's daily functions. Like I mentioned, I found two Canada corporations listed in the District of Columbia, and so obviously these institutions are responsible for playing a different role than the government located in Canada's capital. Let's turn our attention to the originating U.S. Constitution versus Constitution created after Abraham Lincoln, as another serving antidote to rive in deductive reasoning. Old Honest Abe created the 14th Amendment citizen, which essentially paved the way for corporations to hold ownership in property. Before these corporations, aka artificial persons, could not own property in the traditional sense. The abolishment of slavery was the group's descriptive narrative, yet the explainable reasoning was to move the before legal slaves into the status of a 14th Amendment citizen. Those at the time who had the right to ownership and possession of property available under a government or state were held by the Article 4, Section 2 citizen. In Weiss's book, footnote number 22 to be precise, it states, the trustee under a will or a declaration of an express trust are natural persons, citizens, within the meaning of Article 4, Section 2 of the Constitution, and are therefore entitled to all the privileges and immunities of the same. The 14th Amendment citizen, on the other hand, is entitled to the same rights offered to artificial persons, being corporations. The extract originating from the long form I'm referring to immediately relates to the event recorded as such and signed by both guardian and agent, usually at a Mason-built hospital. And so that which was extracted from the long form becomes the birth certificate that is created by the government, electronically signed by an office of government, which allows the bearer the ability to function in commerce. So what status of government is responsible for this form, in which becomes our token to be able to sue or be sued by artificial persons, corporations, in other words? Is the extract proof of the 14th Amendment citizen person who is a creature of the District of Columbia under a different U.S. Constitution? Is it the body politic that, if acting in the position of trustee and so has the capacity of a natural person, or that which is created through the government acting as a corporation, in which the birth certificate allows the bearer to be recognized within the same jurisdiction? You know who is also deemed to be a corporation? The Roman Church, from which we get our foundations of equity, and equity governs over those interests not held in common law. It was the Roman Church who established the likes of Cambridge and Oxford to then train what became known as lawyers, who did not speak to the estates and interests held in the common law because barons and lords held individual allegiances, and so were subject to their own right to speak directly to the king. They were responsible to do their own bidding, in other words. They did not need mouthpieces to represent them, since they were not holding estates in equity unless they moved their legal estates into a trust, so as to become a beneficial holder, namely to enjoy the property's profits or the estate's profits without being subjugated to the common law incidents and rules. What is known as the Tri-City States? The Tri-City States consist of the Vatican, City of London, and District of Columbia, and so were created to build and maintain the interests belonging to corporations, we can deduce. The government, beginning from the Lord Spiritual, Temporal, and of Commons, those directly and indirectly held under the monarchy, build and maintain the interests created for governments to administrate over, the body politic. What I wish to make clear, exactly in nature, is that the common law and equity states and interests can never be commingled, and so holds the same premise that those rights held to an unincorporated interest can never be commingled with those held by the 14th Amendment citizen, aka the corporation. The all caps name is a tri-city creation, in my current opinion, which allows the natural person the ability to interact with corporations, like our trustee in government who holds a trust-type position. Mirrored exactly like in how those without the right to the common law were represented by church, today's citizenry are identified as those without the right to the English common law, and so proof of a right to the use of an equitable estate or interest under first a body politic, to which through the extract, the birth certificate, becomes evidence of a 14th Amendment citizen. It is you, as I have begun stating in this series, that is receiving exactly what you are deemed to be representing in the world on behalf of artificial persons. No one is enslaving you or holding you by means of involuntary servitude. The world system is simply controlling the corporations, not the people. And you are holding the states and interests under this vehicle. Look at the world media. It speaks in confusion of the two without ever comprehending the difference between the capacity enjoyed by natural persons versus those rights instilled in an artificial person. The media is only ever referring to those estates and interests of an artificial person, the 14th Amendment person, namely, yet does not also possess the depth that there are two different types of persons with legal rights: a tenant subject to a body politic, or a tenant with the same rights as a corporation. Are you also caught in reifying the abstract objectification of the corporation, and so making it real as pertains to accepting to be equal in law? It is a 14th Amendment citizen that can go into foreclosure and bankruptcy. It is the corporation which has no credit. It is a fiction of law, namely, and why it uses only legal notes of tender, promises, essentially, to excite trade among itself. It is the same type idea of money that is used to be able to play Monopoly. These legal notes of tender. It is for the game only. It means nothing, including all of its property titles, utilities, taxes, houses, and hotels, which are currently all swimming in a pool backed by synthetic trades belonging to the derivatives market as it sits today, which we learned in video 2, referring to the great taking. This is the interest spoke about in our public news channels. All of it is only ever belonging to the corporate interest, which includes the money used to make purchase and pay taxes, which has nothing to do with those estates held in trust, which then becomes evidence of clear separation of, and let's say in Article 4, Section 2 citizen versus a 14th Amendment citizen, whereas the 14th Amendment citizen can only ever accumulate ownership rights to the property available to them, and so not immediately with a right to the beneficial stake held by the individual as a life tenant. And exactly like when you get up from the game of Monopoly, you do not take all the title deeds and buildings and its money with you. You just simply return it to its reality. Off topic yet of the same nature, the second you blame any entity, especially an artificial construct, for any and all your problems, you just gave away your power that resides within you when you make a choice to step out to defend a lesser right to an estate or interest in land. It is you. Which arrives us in a simple common sense reflection that in order for one to be 100% responsible means that one cannot then transfer blame onto another, but rather one just has to go to their own contracts to see if their agreement is secured, is how they know it in reality. Now go ahead and say it. Say it with me. I am 100% responsible for all that I have experienced and hold. Now, what do you possess if you accept this responsibility? Simply the power to make change, real lasting change, so no longer stuck within the quagmire which affords only a systemic artificial change. So keeping in line with our research in law concerning our common law states, held in consequence of our birthright of English law, we need to make our choice to accept that not only has all our perceived assets been already removed or been moved back into the box, as discussed in video 2, through trust rules, because like Monopoly game, we're only valuable within the world of corporate interest. So why would we want any of it? It is also of note that any corporation is not charged with morals or ethics. It is built to serve its own purpose. Thereby, it will always remain confined to its own prohibitions and limitations when it comes to the type of property assets it can hold. And you, my non-AI, binary, born of nature ELS friend, who has hopefully maintained their pure blood status when they did not give in to the recent corporate scheme, will always hold a superior title from which monarchy, governments, and corporations will only maintain a right of use to your life estate. The impending collapse, meaning what is truly collapsing, which is shared continuously in the media, yep, those estates and interest of property held by corporations. So hold it, What are you doing? Did you not like this video? Smash either button, since you have choice, like or dislike. Use it. Use your choice and share a potential different reality than the one made based on fear alone by sharing this video. And with that, God bless. And let's get her done.